So we have an exciting, oh, there we go, I'll just wait till the bird finishes. We have an exciting new plan for the city's nighttime, for nighttime life, for the nighttime economy. It's 10 years since we reformed our planning controls. In that time we strongly promoted small bars, and we also brought out a policy called Sydney Open. The sorts of exciting initiatives that we had going in the city in terms of activation of laneways and the small bars really all stopped when the lockout laws came in, and so now this is post that, and we're looking at a new future for our city villages, and for former industrial areas like this here in Alexandria. So in the city central, and that's the area that's bounded by Barangaroo on the west, Central on the south, Hyde Park on the east, we are proposing to extend opportunities there from 5 a.m. to 24 hours. So making that central area a 24-hour global city area, and in our village areas, in our main streets, we're looking at allowing incremental increases in operating hours for venues that perform really well on our main streets, as long as patrons enter by the main street or by a side entrance, or not by a side entrance or a back lane, but by the main street. And in our new areas like Barangaroo, like Green Square, Dank Street, we are providing new opportunities. And here in Alexandria, we're really quite excited because this is a heritage industrial area, and it's about the future of the nighttime economy for our city. You know, this is close to Green Square. It's a very rapidly developing residential area, and in the future people will want interesting spaces for cultural activities, for live music, and we see real opportunities here in Alexandria.
So a place like this, is this being sold to a developer, or what's the, for example?
No, what we're doing is we're creating a new landscape for Sydney. You know, in the CBD, here in Alexandria, in our main villages, and this isn't something that will happen overnight, but it's something where, and we think there'll be a really strong response from industry, and we know there'll be a strong response from the community, because 10,000 people told us in March that they really wanted us to create a more interesting and diverse nighttime economy. So what we're looking at is not just about licensed premises, but in the city, for example, as in other cities around the world, people who want to go to the dry cleaners or bookshop or some other outlet will be able to do so for that 24-hour period. It means that tourists that come to Sydney might want to go out to the Blue Mountains for the day, come back, want to go shopping at night. So and by expanding that period right across the city, it addresses that issue of saturation in particular parts, which of cause such problems for community and the police. But it also means we've got more activity happening in the city. You know, more people about on the street of various ages and backgrounds, not just as we saw in King's Cross and Oxford Street earlier on, where it was people of a certain age who wanted to really get drunk, and we saw the outcomes there. This is about a civilised, sophisticated city where people can go out at night, they can stay out late, or they can go shopping at night if they so desire.
With the 24-hour trading, are you effectively wanting Sydney to become a city that never stops?
Well, in that central area, it'll be a city where people who have travelled from overseas, or people who do want to go out and do things at night, or shift workers who have different hours, it provides that opportunity. It works well in other cities, and we're going to introduce it here in Sydney.
How much of this needs state government?
Well, what we're proposing is what we can do. In terms of those areas where the lockout laws apply, that would need state government action, and so and those areas of King's Cross and Oxford Street would come into our village main street areas if in time the lockout laws are changed, which many people hope that will happen.
So any of that main street proposal, is any of that
No, it doesn't. It's providing opportunities, and With the Main Street proposal, it means that a venue that can presently operate till 12 can apply to have extended hours, and then they go on a trial basis and we assess their performance. If they perform well, they can continue. If they don't, it'll be revoked. So it's a way of creating, a buzzing nighttime activity, but also protecting reasonable amenity for people.
The Chamber of Commerce says it's not a bad idea, but at the end of the day, it's viability with the idea. Who wants to buy a book?
Well, when I put that to people in crowds, they say, "Oh, I do." No, it provides opportunity. But if we have, people who work hours, they can't get to the shops, or people who are visiting, it provides an opportunity. I mean, I've been in cities overseas or cities in China where people do go out and buy shoes at 11 o'clock at night. I probably wouldn't do that, but lots of people like to.
If the state government does push back on the areas that they're in control of, how hard will the City of Sydney lobby to get these changes in place?
Well, we're in charge of planning, and we identify what activities can happen in certain areas, and we're identifying that in the central CBD it can be a 24-hour operation for not just licensed premises, but for a whole range of businesses. We're saying in our villages, on a performance base, you can get incremental increase, which is what people are asking for. And then we're saying in new areas like the Green Square Town Centre, like Barangaroo, like Dank Street, like Village East in Zetland, where there's a dramatic increase in population, we're looking at introducing late night venues there till 2 a.m. on the same basis as our main street. So it's about really opening up and providing opportunity, and we are getting feedback from the industry that they're very interested in this, and I know people in live music and in creative and cultural industries are very excited about it, because they know there's been a pall on this sort of activity in Sydney for at least 5 years. So we see this as a renaissance for Sydney, really, and a renaissance for our cultural life, and particularly for our music industry, as well as giving people that opportunity to go out and socialise with their friends. Not everyone wants to go and socialise till 2 or 3 or 4 a.m. in the CBD, but lots of young people do, and they'll have a range of opportunities right across the city, just not focused on one area.
What's your particular vision for this site that we are in at the moment, the arts and cultural precinct?
Well, I think this, you've got your sawtooth buildings here, and they have great spaces. We've said this is, South Sydney was a former major industrial area of Australia, really, and we've identified, really worthwhile buildings, and they have heritage value, and they can provide great spaces and opportunities for all sorts of creative events, and that's not near residential, so noise is not going to be a factor, and it could become in the future a really buzzy, interesting, exciting creative precinct, and we think that's very exciting. And the feedback we get from our creators is they'd really welcome that opportunity.
So you can see this site as around the clock, would you?
Yeah, and people coming and going, and being creative, make it quite exciting.
What are they creating?
They're creating music, dance, poetry, performance, acrobatics. I don't know what they'll be creating, but there'll be the opportunity there for them. We're about identifying what you can do in particular areas, and we're saying in this area we think this will be a great opportunity, and we're not going to be impacting, because we have a very high population in the city of Sydney, highest in Australia, and so we've got to balance the needs of the people living in those high densities in terms of their amenity, as well as, many people who choose to live in the city also want to go out at night, and they want to go out to dinner after the theatre. And one of the other things we're doing is extending by an hour venues that do provide pubs that do provide opportunities for live music. They can open an hour longer after the performance is finished. Dedicated performance, like say Eternity Playhouse in Darlinghurst, could stay open after the performance concludes, and people could have drinks. So it's about a sophisticated, civilised nighttime economy. Well, one of the issues about King's Cross was this total focus on a very small area, and there wasn't adequate public transport, and that's the place that everyone went. They just fell out onto the roads and the footpaths, had been drinking, and there was an outburst of violence. But what we're doing is creating much wider opportunities and diversity. So you'll be able to decide whether or not you want to go to King Street, or you want to go to Barangaroo, or you want to go to Dank Street, or you want to go to Green Square. There'll be a whole range of places that young people can go. And so you won't have that focus and that saturation on a particular area like we did in King's Cross.
You mentioned transport. Doesn't this idea of round the clock 24-hour thing rely on round the clock 24-hour transport?
And that's again that ball's also in the state's court. But you know, this industry, the nighttime industry, is worth $4 billion annually. It employs 35,000 people. It's an important consideration for government, for Destination New South Wales, for tourism, that we provided sophisticated opportunities and transport for people to get home. We know that in the city, in time, we'll have Metro, which we're running for 21 hours. Here in Alexandria, it'll be within walking distance of the Woolloomooloo Metro, again operating 21 hours. So we're planning for the future, and we're planning for a more dynamic and exciting future for Sydney.
So certainly everything, the plan is based around public transport as well, good access routes?
Yes, but you know, one of the things that people have asked us is to have more happening nearer where they live, so then they will be walking. You know, if they're living in Surrey Hills or Darlinghurst or Redfern or Chippendale, they'll be walking to venues. So that's one issue. Over the last 5 years, also other opportunities developed with Uber, for example, and people getting around, working out ways of getting around the city. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we do need that regular transport running at night. Melbourne can do it, Sydney should be able to do it. So we really put that to the government. This is important for the vitality of our city and the opportunities for people working in creative music industries and in licensed premises, and an opportunity for people to have a more exciting and interesting social life.
Do you find that it will also change the way that people view Sydney's nightlife, considering there's a bit of a hangover, if you will, from the lockout laws on the way international visitors, the way people in Australia look at Sydney?
Yes, look, we're hoping. I mean, when we introduced the small bar legislation, the licensing laws were changed, and we had the laneway program going in 2008, 2009. You know, people were saying, oh, you know, Sydney's really cool now, it's better than Melbourne. And then we got the lockout laws in 2014, and a lot of people thought it was very uncool, although many people in the King's Cross area welcomed it. So it's one of those things that had consequences, and consequences for opportunities for people to go out at night, consequences for music industry, consequences for our cultural life. So we're hoping this is going to give Sydney back its mojo.